I've dug into the EU Q&A for the GPSR, the new regulations. So I want to tell you what we know for Etsy sellers so far, updated, summarized from the Q&A. For those that don't know, this is new legislations that came out on the 13th of December, and Etsy have been a little slow coming out with some help. They did give some guidance, but a lot of it was saying, we'll figure it out by the end of the month. But there's been a lot of questions, there's been a lot of misinformation. So I've dug into the Q&A article from the EU. This is where they've answered questions from a lot of people. Now, there's still a lot of questions remaining. They're about to put out some guidance for micro enterprises, which I assume we would be under. But here it is as it starts. Here are the key requirements for all Etsy sellers. And the point of this, before you get mad, the EU describes it best. Consumers are entitled to only safe products. And this includes Etsy sellers because exceptions can't be made based on the size of the business. So, firstly, economic operators. All products sold to EU buyers must have an EU-based economic operator who ensures compliance with safety standards. These options include authorised representatives, importers, or fulfilment centres if no manufacturer or importer is based in the EU. Now, I have had a number of people reach out to me who are in the EU offering that they will be my EO, and I really appreciate this, but I'm going to make a whole other video on why you can't or you don't want to have your family, well, your friends at the least, standing for you here. But anyway, so what risk assessments and technical documentation is there? Sellers must document risks, for example, the materials and potential hazards, and how these are mitigated. This applies to all products, including vintage items and physical or digital art. Digital art is included as well. People asked about this. The main things that aren't included are antiques over 100 years old, or things that are already covered by a more stringent regulations, for example, medical equipment. Risk assessments must be part of the technical documentation and retained for 10 years. Now, risk assessments sound scary. I have it from authority from many people that it could be simpler than we think it is, just basically the common sense things that we're doing, because none of us are trying to send dangerous products to people. But I will give you examples when I get them. How about labeling things? So every product must include the name of the manufacturer, address, safety warnings, and the EO's contact details on the product or its packaging. And here's one. I was being told that QR codes would be okay, but it says QR codes can supplement these labels, but they can't replace these labels. For second-hand and vintage items, they are included in the GPSR unless they're antiques 100 years old or clearly marked for repair or reconditioning. Digital items such as patterns must also comply if they pose safety risks. So this is a little unclear, but it does say that digital items are included, physical and digital items. But for example, instructions leading to harm, files containing malware. So is there a risk that your files could contain malware? I suppose, yes, there is. How have you mitigated the risk? By using virus protection on your computer and uploading through Etsy. So sellers need to provide clear usage instructions and disclaimers. EU, I would love you to provide us with clear instructions for how to do all of this as small businesses. It's absolutely different. If you're a big business, you've probably been doing most of this yourself. You probably understand keeping the documentation. I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, basically small businesses, we don't have the time or the money to keep this level of documentation. Hopefully it's not too difficult, but we'll see. So even items provided free of charge must comply with the GPSR requirement. So this does make sense. I was wondering this, and if people were getting round this, well, people are wondering with digital items, if the item comes in and it's safe, well, the digital items, you can't shut off shipping to certain places on Etsy. So if a sale comes in and the person's already downloaded it, are you in the clear if you refund them and they got their item for free? And no, free items still count. However, that doesn't count for gifts to family and friends. You can't mark something as a gift to an absolute stranger that happens to have been in your shop or something like that. But a genuine gift, they don't count. So let's get a little more specific into the categories. So for physical art, think about your risk areas, the material used, for example, the paints and the frames. Are there sharp edges, small detachable parts? Also, what are the paints made of? What are the frames dyed with? Is there glass in it? How are you packaging it? So, to action this, you do want to document the non toxicity of your paints and materials. It's likely you'll get these from your supplier. Label the products with safety warnings like keep away from fire. I'm making this sound easier than it is. I think it's more easy than it feels, but it's probably not super simple. But it's a process we'll probably get used to. So, digital sellers reduce areas of risk. Misuse of file instructions with a potential harm. Just basic things that we should be doing. I have tested this file for use with these kind of cutting machines. I have tested this file and it's compatible with Canva. Just let them know what it's compatible with, and everything else is at their own risk, kind of thing. And obviously scan your computer. So include disclaimers and usage instructions there. So vintage sellers, your risk areas are products sold as just vintage must meet the modern safety standards if sold in the EU. The exceptions being proper antiques. So we're going to have to verify the material safety. So is there lead paint in your items? Kind of could be. Add disclaimers for the product that it's not intended for children, obviously. So you can have collectibles. It's not saying that you can't sell them, but your lead painted soldier or your lead soldiers that kids used to play with, you shouldn't be selling them for children. And I don't think it's enough not to put them in the toy category or something, but you've got to stand up and say not for children. Stand up, label it, and say. For print on demand, thankfully, Printify has come out with a whole load of guidelines, which we talked about last week. But if you're not with a print on demand company that's brought out guidelines yet, you're thinking of things like what ink are they printing with? What textiles are they printing on? What's their production quality? Never hurts to order a sample. You should be. This is your business. And you've also got to ensure that your supplier complies with the GPSR requirements. So request the compliance documentations from them and include their EO details in the product listings. Printify are stepping up as your EO, so just make sure everything's right there. But what are these challenges for Etsy sellers? There's the cost, the economic operator cost. It doesn't matter how small you are and how cheap a company you find. If most of us who aren't selling many things to the EU are not selling consistently to the EU, I don't know how many sales I'm going to make to the EU in the next year. But historically, it's not going to be loads, so I can't afford thousands. So if it's going to be hundreds, it's figuring out how much is really worth it. And for many of us, sadly, it's not going to be worth it. So at the minute in time, And also, if you have diverse catalogues, if you make lots of different things, wide product ranges, it could be difficult to keep track of everything across all products. This could involve a whole lot of paperwork. I am thinking potentially you'll have to think about sort of simplifying, maybe only offering a couple of products to EU market. And products, it doesn't have to. I'm not entirely sure, but what I've been hearing, something like a t-shirt from the same manufacturer, you can have small changes on it, but a t-shirt and a hat might be two different products. So, yeah. So, the GPSR, I keep saying it wrong, covers digital products. So it's difficult to figure out what the safety risks are. They're a bit vaguely defined. So it's harder to know if we're in compliance with digital items. So I don't know if I've helped a whole lot more there. The TLDR for that whole thing is it looks like digital counts. And it also seems like QR codes are not good enough. You really have to label your products. That's what we've got so far. I'll keep you informed and keep an eye out in the next couple of days.